Hey, what's up, Beak Squad? David Burns with you in another live stream. Thanks for joining us tonight. I see you guys are gathered in the comments already. Appreciate you being with us tonight. I'm outdoors. It's such a beautiful time to be outdoors. I just had to broadcast from outside. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I know some of you will be enjoying tonight as we talk about the varroa destructor mite. I made a video a few days ago about using a push-in queen cage to control mites. So tonight I'm going to talk about the varroa destructor mite and kind of fill you guys in about the mite, what it means. Some of you are new to beekeeping, and I know that I hear back from a lot of my B Team 6 members across the country. Over 200 of you are a part of B Team 6. And I know from doing this for nearly 7 or 8 years now that a lot of people just really don't understand the varroa mite and how deadly it can be to a hive. So tonight I hope to enlighten you, help you out a little bit, but we'll also be answering any other question that you want to ask tonight. So if you have other questions that you're thinking about to ask, feel free to ask those, and we'll get to those. But let me start with my thoughts on the varroa destructor. If I can find my mouse, there it is. Yeah, take a look at this. This is a chart that I made up and kind of made it up in a hurry. Sorry if I don't have everything just right. But basically, when it comes to controlling the varroa mite, historically, we've always used this sort of an approach. We have chemicals. So we have the hard chemicals, then we have the soft chemicals, and then we have things that are more physical, like a green drone comb or a screen bottom board. Then we have things that are more preventative. So let's talk about this. When the varroa mite first came out in when it first came to the U.S. about 1987, and that's when we didn't know what to do with varroa destructors. So a lot of the harder chemicals that we know now, like fluvavinate, humiphos, those are the chemicals that were the big hitters back then. But then we realized this was causing problems to the bees, causing queens and drones to be sterile. Getting all that chemical was getting collected, and it would stay in the comb. It was being absorbed in the comb, and the comb actually is the place where bees raise all their brood. So you can imagine how deadly that is. So that was a problem. We had to start backing away from some of those harsher, harder chemicals. But then the softer chemical approach, we often refer to things like Apigard, oxalic acid, Formic Pro, Hopguard. These are the softer, not really chemical, but they're compounds. Then we get into physical ways to control mites, and that is with a green drone comb, a screen bottom board, or a powder sugar dusting, making the mites fall off. But then we get down to the preventative way that helps prevent mites from expanding, and that's with the breaking the brood cycle, which I made a video a few days ago on that, and stock selection. Again, stock selection, meaning that we can hopefully raise queens that produce progenies of bees, worker bees, that are able to control mites, such as the ankle biters and so on. They're more hygienic, so they're able to get rid of mites more quickly off out of the hive, so that they don't just become such a problem. But if you're brand new to beekeeping, or if you've never heard this before, let me tell you that the varroa destructor mite is a very real thing, and it is very deadly to colonies. The varroa mite spreads viruses by piercing the bees, and those viruses gets transferred into the bees. The bees feed each other mouth to mouth, and that is how that virus, different kinds of viruses, gets moved around the hive once those varroa mites get into your hive. And so it is really a problem. A lot of you, especially on B Team 6, you ask me, what is my preferred method? You often say, hey, David, I understand mites are a bad thing. What is it that I should do? How do I control mites? I can tell you what I do, but all of us are different. We all have different philosophy about life. We have philosophies that are different about treatment. Some people don't like to treat at all. They don't like to use any kinds of things that could introduce something foreign into the hive. And if that's your position, I have no choice. Gladly respect that. And that just means you'll deal with mites in a different way. So for me to tell you what I do, it doesn't really work because my philosophy is going to be different. And you just don't want to follow my philosophy. Same is true with if you follow big commercial beekeepers. They have an approach because they have thousands of colonies and they have to control mites very quickly. They have to have a way to control mites to keep their bread and butter going. And so that might be different than if you're a backyard beekeeper with a hive or two. So not only is it philosophy, but it's your personal number of hives, where you're at, whether you're a commercial, sideliner, a hobbyist, it's going to make all the difference in the world. So personally, what I always encourage my B Team 6 members and you guys that ask me is that I prefer not to use chemicals, harsh or soft, until you have to. I really do consider testing for mites is real important. You need to test every 30 days. And I think you need to test with an alcohol wash or a Dawn soap wash. And that way you can get a real accurate number. I used to not like sacrificing 300 bees to test for mites, but now it makes more sense to me because the bees themselves sting you when you start intruding the hive. Like if a bear started to intrude and take over a hive, there would be more than 300 bees that would sacrifice their lives to stop the intruder. So we're just helping bees stopping mites by sampling like that once a month. But if you don't like killing bees, you can do a powdered sugar test. And it's not as accurate, but you can make the adjustment by adding a mite or two to your count and get up there. But some people still say if you douse those bees in a powdered sugar shake, you could kill the bees anyway. They might die. Some people have said that. So it's all a matter of your personal position. I encourage you to really think through what you personally want to do in controlling mites. What I do is wait until I see my numbers are out of reach of my, well, if you look at this chart I'm showing you, this little triangle, I like to use the preventative things first. I like to break the queen's brood cycle once in July, once in August, once in September for 1 week. And that's going to, once a week, if I do it once a week a month, I'm preventing 28,000 mites from reproducing. And so just for 1 week, that's amazing, isn't it? So you do that once in July, August, September. That's when our mites are going to grow the most. So that's important. You can also use some stock selection, find some people that are doing great work on trying to reduce the mites by breeding queens that are more hygienic. They have a better way of controlling mites. Now, that is still risky. Some people think if you buy a very hygienic queen, that they're mite resistant, you don't have to do anything. That's not true at all. Nothing is 100%. So even if they're 20%, you're still going to have to put 80% of work to control mites. So be careful not to assume the queen's genetics are going to do it all. And then I start working my way up. I start down at the bottom. I work my way up. Green drone comb, I really like that. It does trap a lot of mites. Screen bottom board, when the mites fall out, they don't easily get back in. Powdered sugar dusting, a lot of mites fall off the bees when you douse them with powdered sugar. Cup of powdered sugar, let it fall between the frames is another way. That's when, if you can't control them at that point, less than 3 mites per 100 bees, then you jump up to some of the soft treatments. My preferred way is Formic Pro because it kills below the capped cells. No other treatment does that. And a lot of the mites are under the capped cells of the pupae. That's how they reproduce. And then I rarely go. I've only used hard treatments just to make videos. I personally don't jump up there. I did one last summer. I think I used Amatrez or Apiary to show you guys how to use it in a hive, the strips. And that was kind of we also use that in the Master Beekeeper field test as well to test people if they knew how to use the Apiary strips. So that was kind of fun. So that is my personal approach. I just start at the bottom, try to prevent mites. I know they're going to get worse in the summer, and I just keep working my way up if I can't control them. Preventatively, I take physical action against them, and if I can't do it that way, I jump up to the soft treatments and I try to control mites that way. Sometimes I don't do anything at all. If my mite levels are bouncing 3 or 4 or 5, I may wait and see if it doesn't get worse. Maybe my bees will take care of that. So I'm not really quick to jump in there. As soon as I get 4 or 3, I'll hold off a little bit. But if I can see, if I open up a hive and do a test and there's 15, I got to blast off some mites really quickly with some Formic Pro, just kills them all at once. So I like to do stuff like that. I hope that's helpful to give you an idea of the varroa destructor mite. All bees have mites, and I know some people say my hives don't have mites. My bees don't have mites. I didn't see any. And I always say, if you didn't see them, you need a pair of reader glasses or something like that. So you got to be careful assuming that you can see all the mites, because you may not be able to see them. So keep that in mind as well. If your bees have mites, it's not if, but the volume of mites, that's important. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Bohemia Bees, good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Jason, is that right? Well, good to have you. That's right. All hives are going to have mites to some degree. It's just how many mites are in there, and that's why it's important to do a test every 30 days, because 30 days reveal where your mite levels are going, and 30 days give you a generation of bees. At 21 days, workers emerge. So for those of you new to mites, let me just tell you real quickly that the varroa destructor mite reproduces in the capped cells of honeybees. So they're inside the capped cell of the pupae developing. The founderess mother mite jumps in there, and she has her offsprings inside the pupae. Usually 2 or 3 mites is up to 5, but usually about an average of 2 mites will be her family that she raises. And she can raise about 5 families in her lifetime, which is usually about 5 months. So they can really raise a lot of mites. And so you're right about the volume. It's so like if you have a lot of mites in there, a lot of people think, oh no, I have a lot of mites. Well, what that means is you're going to have a lot more mites because they reproduce like rabbits. If you can just get that in your thinking. It's not that you have mites that wandered aimlessly in there, they stumbled in there, and now they're just hanging out. No, they're wired to reproduce. They're wired to jump in cells and reproduce. So if you have 1 mite that reproduces, now you've got 3. But if you have 3 mites that reproduce, you got 6. I mean, it just goes on exponentially. It just gets so out of control so fast. So be careful not to think you're just going to burn them off and never have them. And they're always coming in the front of the hive too. Can you talk about temperatures for using Apiguard? It's 90 for the daytime temp, too hot. That's a good question, Tammy, and I'm going to refer you to the label. You can only go by what the label suggests, and I'm not going to make any speculations. I never tried to extrapolate any information and give my opinions about the label. So most of these treatments do have a clear explanation of temperatures. And so I really encourage you, I'm trying to help all of you become citizen scientists. Please be your own citizen scientist, study that label, because federal law says that label in your hands is the law. So check that out in your label and abide by the label. Is the summertime a good time to check for mites? That's a good question. It's really the only time we can check. I mean, we can check in spring and fall. Can't really check in winter because you don't want to open up frame. You don't want to pull out frames of brood if it's above 6 or below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. But I would encourage you to make it part of your inspection routine. I encourage you to inspect your hive every 2 weeks. And so one inspection is just to make sure your queen's laying eggs. You don't have to see your queen. Pull a frame out, look for eggs. Okay, I got eggs. Second time you go in the next 2 weeks, which would be once a month, you're looking for brood diseases, abnormalities. Excuse me. You're looking for mites. So every 30 days, one of those inspections is a mite check you're going to do during the season of summer. Yeah. Yeah, different climates are more prone to mite infestations. That's correct. I got a frog in my throat. The way to look at it is when your bees are at their best. When they're reproducing the most brood, that's when the mites are going to reproduce the most, because they're reproducing on the brood of the honeybees. So that's the best way to know. When your colony gets to be 40 to 80,000 in the summer, you're going to have a lot more mites that keep expanding rapidly. What's the difference between Formic Pro and Midway Quick Strips? They are both formic acid, correct? Yeah, they're both formic acid. I can't answer that. I should know the answer to that, but right now I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, other than saying that Midway Quick Strips, when they first came out, I don't think there was Formic Pro. And I think as they've improved and made some changes, they gravitated toward the Formic Pro, which is what most of us fall to. But I used to use Midway Quick Strips as well. Hey, thank you, Greg Burns. Hey, good to see you. Nature's Image Farm, thanks for being awesome. Well, you're awesome too. Anybody with the last name of Burns, how can he not be awesome, right? Hey, appreciate that donation as well, buddy. Appreciate it a lot. I was going to get over there and see you guys, Greg. I was Sherry and I wanted to stop by in July when we were in Ohio. Things just got a little too hectic. Doggone it, didn't make it over there. Mike Vineyard, is a bottom screen board better than others? That's very debatable. A bottom screen for controlling mites, I assume is what you mean. It has 1/8 inch hardware cloth. Bees can't get through it. Small hive beetles and mites can. But we always say that if a mite falls to a solid bottom board, they just hang out down there until a bee walks by and jump on a bee. If they fall onto a screen bottom board, they fall through it and become part of the food chain below the hive. And that's a lot of truth to that. But a screen bottom board has only a small level of effectiveness in controlling mites. In other words, some mites fall through because you can slide a board under there and wait a week and pull it out. You'll see mites on that board, right? So some are falling out of the hive. It works. But other people just choose not to use screen bottom boards, and they just control their mites and don't worry about what's falling out. That's a good point.
Is there one better than others?
I don't think there's one screen bottom board that's better than the other. I don't think so. No, I don't know. Screen bottom board is a screen bottom board, right? How late do you treat in the year? You want to treat when you can, and that's another temperature question. How long, what season can you treat and use some of the chemicals? You look at Formic Pro, you see the lowest temperature, and you have to say, well, my high temperature has to be at least this temperature or I can't use it. So that's one of the things you're going to have to look at the label and decide which of these works better in which season. But I would say August and September for here in Illinois is, we're still able to treat for mites. When we get into October, probably still could use Formic Pro. You need about 5 days at a good temperature, as the label says. I think we could do it in October. Okay, let me just say this, though. Hold on. I think I didn't clarify this. So you don't want to just treat for mites once or twice a year. To me, that's a very dangerous way to run a hive. You can't control your blood pressure, or if you have sugar diabetes or something, you can't take medicine once in January, once in October. That's not how. If you have an infection, you can't take an antibiotic, one pill, and take another pill in 5 days. They make things worse. But so what you want to do is you want to control the virus. You control the viruses in the hive by keeping the mite levels low all year long. And that's why you start at the base of that pyramid again. Let me bring that up. And so you start by breaking the queen's brood cycle. You want to use your green drone comb all year long, screen bottom board all year long. You're controlling mites all year long, because the less mites you have, the less viruses you're going to have, the better and healthier your bees are. If you wait and don't do anything and decide somebody told you to treat once in the spring, once in the fall, blah, 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 bad for bees, very bad, because viruses continue. And your the mite population, if you treat once in the spring, in 2 or 3 months, they'll be higher than when you've treated in the spring, same in the fall. So you need to control them by testing every 30 days. So that's another way to look at that. Why do mites die out completely over winter? They do not, Anthony.
Why don't?
Oh, why don't they? Sherry's over here helping me read. Why don't mites die out completely over winter? Two reasons. Most mites are going to live 2 to 5 months, and they are like everything else in the hive. They're parasites. They live off the bees. They can go 5 days without food, by the way, if they don't ever eat. So they can live in the cluster, and they do. I've seen a lot of colonies and pictures of dead colonies that have mites all over the place. When they finally die out, the mites freeze to death too. But until then, the mites are in there, and the queen keeps laying right in the winter, even if it's a small amount, and the mites are jumping in there and reproducing. That's why they don't die out completely in the winter, just like small hive beetle. Small hive beetle do not die in the winter. They cluster with bees. Mites really can expand in the wintertime because we can't really treat in the wintertime very effectively at all. We don't like to open our hives up. So if you have a lot of brood in there, mites are increasing. Good question. Oh, thanks, Bohemia Bee. Appreciate that. David Burns Varroa Treatment Fund. Yeah, there you go. Oh, it does cost a lot to treat mites if you have a lot of hives, and if you're buying the different types of treatments, it's not cheap. I think that's why a lot of people use oxalic acid, and that's why a lot of people break the law and buy it from places where it's not an authorized chemical to use on bees, but they buy it from different farm stores. And if it doesn't say for treatment for bees on the label, it's illegal. And there's only one legal treatment right now, bioxyl. But anyway, you can only use that chemical, and it's not cheap. Yep, that's good. Is putting chemicals on a new package safe? It's safe. It's always safe if you're using the chemical that is designed for bees. But hear me out. A lot of the treatments that we use, it's specific about how many bees you have to have in the hive. I was looking at one the other day, and it said you can't treat unless you have 10,000 bees on 6 frames of bees. So you have to read the label. The label isn't just trying to complicate things for you. The label is there to help you not kill your bees by treating them. You have to have the right number of bees. Some of these labels say you have to put the strip or the pad in a certain place where the bees are, where the brood are, where the most bees are at, and you have to follow that for the safety of your bees. Yeah, that's a good idea too. It's a good statement. Hey Billy, how are you? Regarding the mites, if you have a yard of 20 hives, how many should you check before you decide to treat or not, or treat them all? Very good question, Billy. A lot of mixed feelings about that. Some people are going to sample it because, time restrictions and all. Again, if you have 20 people in a room, you're going to have to test each individual person to find out, what their numbers, what their blood levels are, whatever. You're going to have to test each individual person. So each colony is a single organism that's going to be, could be drastically. Usually it is very different than another hive just right next to it. Last year I had very low mite levels in hives in one yard that were very close to each other, except one hive in general just flooded with mites. And it was right next to two beside it weren't bad at all. So if I wouldn't have checked each one individually, I would have lost the big colony that had the big number of mites to it. So bad news, it's better to test them all. The good news, you could try to take a chance and think maybe they're all the same, but they're not going to be. They're not going to be. Is green drone comb the best alternative to chemicals? There's never really a best alternative. I think the best way that we need to speak about this is rotate your approach. Modulate the treatment so that the mites, if one doesn't work, your other treatment does. Green drone comb is very effective. Mites do prefer younger drones or developing drones, and by freezing it, it is a chemical-free way to control mites. A green drone comb is the cell size of drone brood cell, and so when the queen lays eggs, she doesn't fertilize it; it becomes a drone. Mites prefer that particular type of cell size to be in, so they prefer drones. By the way, the mites that we have came into our country 1987, I think. They jumped species of bees. They were on Apis cerana up until the 50s is when they jumped over to our bees, Apis mellifera. And so once they jumped species, the mites, well, let me back up. When they were on Apis cerana, they don't affect the workers. They really only affect the drones. And so those bees were more hygienic to keep them off the workers, so on. But now with our bees, Apis mellifera, the mites are able to not just be contained to the drone. By the way, there's only 5% of drones in a hive of all the colony, 5%. So if Apis cerana has mites that are on 5% of the colony, you can see where that's different now that with Apis mellifera, our bees, mites can go to the workers, and they do. And so now you have a greater population of of the mites across the board. So green drone comb, still mites do love to go to the drones, and so the green drone comb is one of the top ways to control mites without using chemicals. I'm not going to say it's the best, but it's probably one of the top. Yeah. Do I use green drone comb all spring, summer, and fall? Here's what I've found. Green drone comb is interesting because some of you place it in your hives like I do, and sometimes the bees fill it up with honey, and you're like, oh, why does it have honey on it? Well, if you put it too far outside the brood nest area, that's what bees do. They put honey in it. So you got to move it kind of closer to the brood nest area, because if the brood nest area is like this in the summertime, you'll see drones kind of on the edges of frames. Is where they raise the drone brood, edges of the brood nest area. So you want to get the green drone comb closer to the brood nest area, but they will fill it up. So in the summertime, you can see it being used as drone brood. But get this, in the fall, late summer, they're not going to raise any drones. And so that will just be sitting there, and they'll probably backfill it with honey. And then what's going to happen in the spring, they will start raising drones on it long before you can pull it out and freeze it. And those drones are going to hatch, and you're going to have a mite bomb. So I don't know if I'd overwinter with them. Not the best idea. How many days before you take out a green drone board? Good question. So the idea is to put it in a hive, let them draw it out. It's an all plastic green, lime green comb, and you have to watch it. I would say, drones are going to be capped over about the same time as most other bees, 8 day-ish. And so you got to watch it. And they're going to emerge on day 24, 3 days longer than a worker. So you got a little time. So 3 weeks, you don't want it to be in there longer than 3 weeks, or they might start emerging, and now you're raising mites. So it's one of those things. It's green, so you can watch it and pull it out and keep observing it. Personally, I pull it out when half of it, usually they cap it from the top down for some reason, but when half of it is capped over, I pull it and freeze it. I don't wait on the bottom to all be capped over. Hey Dustin, how are you? Since you mentioned the hive not laying drones during the winter, when do you think it's too late in the year to raise some queens? Yeah, depending on where you live, as long as drones aren't being killed, as long as there's drone congregation areas where drones are mating with queens, never too late to raise queens. It gets a little harder, I would say, as the season goes on. It gets a little more difficult. I have my best queen productions in May and June and July, and I can still raise queens in August and some in September. A lot harder because you just don't have the nectar flow anymore. And, you have cooler nights or hotter days. It's just different. So try to capitalize on the spring when bees raise queens. Hey, Donnie, do mites prefer the size of cell or the gestation period of drones? That is a very good question. That is very debated and talked about a lot. I'm going to say both. Probably both is the right way to say it. But it's just the fact of that they prefer those drones. They really do. So I'm not going to speak scientifically about that. There are people that know much more about that specific. I'm sure there's been tests done on that. How do I break the queen's brood cycle? Yep, you just go in there and have a long talk with her and tell her that she needs to calm down, settle down, quit laying so many eggs. No, the only way to do that is like I showed you in my last video. If you haven't seen that, you're going to watch it after this live stream. But I actually went into a hive, my horizontal hive, opened up the horizontal hive, and it's just packed full of bees. And I actually found the queen. And on the video, I showed you guys, I pushed a pushing queen cage around her that's made of queen excluder material so the worker bees can pass through it. And we confined her. So she was confined in that little cage, and I'm going to leave in there 7 days. And that's one way to break the brood cycle. What you're doing is, since she can't lay 2,000 eggs a day, then you're not going to get 4,000 mites a day, because there's 2 mites per each egg that matures and becomes a bee. 2 mites are going to grow from that cell. And so you're just really preventing mites. Only do it on a very strong colony that you don't mind sacrificing the queen not laying eggs for a week. By all means, it doesn't hurt a thing. And somebody left a comment on my YouTube and said, oh my gosh, that's really bad. She's going to just sit in that cage full of eggs, and the eggs are going to just build up in her, and she's probably just going to blow up with eggs or something. That's not how it works at all. Okay. Yeah. She's not, everything is fine. Actually, I have found, and I've read other people say, that if you give a queen 1 week off for holiday, she comes out laying like a new queen. She deserves a break. And so that's your way of giving her a break. She'll come out laying so much better. Try it and see. It's great. Hey, Sharon. Sharona. Yeah, Sharona. What do you do with the green drone comb after you freeze it? So you put it in the freezer. Once it's capped over, you go into your freezer, you move the old wedding cake out of the way. You're never going to eat that wedding cake. And then you slide in the green drone comb, leave it in there for a couple of days. It will kill all the mites on there, and the drones too. And then you take it after 2 days and put it right back in the hive. I just leave it frozen, and it thaws out in the hive. Then all the bees that are commissioned for funeral detail, they take out all the dead stuff, clean it up, and start over again. If you want to, you can scrape it off, but that's a waste of good wax. Some people open up the caps with a little honey scraper fork. They kind of pull out drones and all, trying to make it easier for the bees. But freeze it, put it back in the hive, let them repeat. Carolyn, have you ever tried the shook swarm method to reduce varroa, putting all the bees on empty frames? Not sure if I'm too late in the season to do this. No, I haven't. And you've heard me say this before. I have methods that are so effective, there's no reason for me to try anything different. I'm really kind of old-fashioned that way, I guess. If something works, if something ain't broke, I'm not going to try to fix it. Because as soon as I have tried to do that before, I had something that was working. I tried something else because somebody said it's better, but it didn't work for me. So I'm a little nervous about trying things that are working really good or trying different things that I know that I haven't tried before. So no, I've never tried that. Not sure if it's too late for you either to try the shook swarm method. Yeah. Good question though. Oh yeah. So have mites ever been found in queen cells? Most studies show that mites really don't prefer queens. They are and have been found on queens and queen cells, yes, but by far not like they are on drones, not like they are on workers. No. So queen cells, remember, queens are only, they emerge on day 16. So that's a very shorter gestation period to raise a family if you're a mite. Maybe they know that too. Maybe they already understand that cycle is just too short for them to pull it off. Yep. I raise a lot of queens, and I don't usually take my pupae apart, open it up and look, but I've not seen mites around my queen cells. I use HopGuard. Hey, Brenda. Use HopGuard 3 in the summer and OA vape in spring and summer. How do you feel about HopGuard 3? Seems to work good for me, but not many seem to know about it. Yeah, I know HopGuard came out now, probably HopGuard, and then there's HopGuard 1, 2, maybe 3 now. And so it did have a history in the beginning of not being real effective for people that I talked to. They weren't real happy with it. Some people, I think, just never wanted to try 3 because the earlier ones didn't work for them. And And so they just stay away from it. Hey, Mark, thank you for that super sticker. I really appreciate that. Good to see you, Mark. So I've not used HopGuard. I have a really good friend who's an entomologist PhD. He did, and he said it was ineffective for him. And not going to mention his name, but I just kind of felt like, again, these things work for me. What I'm doing right now is so easy to control for me, control mites the way I'm doing it now. So I'm not going to venture off to some of the different ways, I guess, one way I look at it. Hey, Brian, good to see you. Brian from Southwest Florida. What do I do with uncapped nectar honey in the super if you need to treat with Apivar or similar? Thank you. Yeah, you're going to have to read the label of all these different chemicals. Apivar, you need to get it off. But I think, can you take it off and store it somewhere? One of the things you can do if you have a deep freezer, brush the bees off, you can take that whole super off that's not capped over yet, and you can actually put it, even if it's capped over, put it in the deep freeze while you're doing this treatment. And then when you take it out, it will be just like when you put it in the deep freeze. It's so amazing. If you store it somewhere, you're going to have to be careful that it's a low humidity room, doesn't have bugs. And if you have small hive beetle eggs or wax moth eggs in some of that comb and the bees aren't on it, that can kind of go bad on you, especially with Apivar. The number of days that you have to keep that in there, that super is going to go bad if it has bugs in it. So these are always hard questions. You just have to plan your treatment based on what you got on the hive. So if you got supers on it, fall back to Formic Pro, because you can use Formic Pro or salic acid with the honey supers on. So you have to kind of alter your treatment based on this configuration of your hive. It's one way to look at it. Now in Florida, you're probably too hot to use Formic Pro. So you have to kind of think through those. We just don't have a perfect temperature, perfect chemical for all scenarios. Yeah, it is kind of tough. Hi, Brenda. Are mites in bottom of cells? I took drone comb out and pulled brood. Couldn't find mites on larvae. It was all capped. They hide in the beginning. They go down and kind of snorkel under the royal jelly. That's kind of where they jump in there and hide in the base of the cell. But as they start reproducing and eating, they go up and pierce into the side fat bodies of the developing pupae. So, no, I think they're going to be as the pupae grows and begins to form that cocoon, they actually go more upward onto the sides, the abdomen area of the developing pupae. So you just didn't have any. That's a good sign. Hey, Alan, how are you? Under the bottom board on the ground, will it help to spread diatomaceous earth? Because you're hoping that whatever falls out there gets kind of eat or scratched up, stabbed, death by 1,000 swords or cuts or whatever. Yeah, probably wouldn't hurt. It's a little bit affected by rain, and so usually you don't see your bees under there. That can hurt bees. Probably wouldn't hurt. A lot of people think that you can treat the soil around your hive like with diatomaceous earth, and that way it helps with small hive beetle. My position on that is you're only trying to injure small hive beetle larvae. And if your hive is so infected with small hive beetle that they're reproducing and now larvae are crawling and falling out of the front of your hive, a little too late to do something. It's better to trap the mama beetles before they lay eggs and before larvae start sliming your hive. That's kind of my view of that, treating ground around your hive. Dustin, what's your method of storing your extracted comb? I don't really like the idea of paramoth, but I don't have enough freezer space available. Considering running a rope light through, yeah, and adding a fan. Yeah, because wax moths don't like air and light. That's a good point. A lot of people have these things built like you're talking about outdoors even. Dustin, this is one of the most frequently asked questions that people ask me is, what do I do with this comb? It's kind of simple for me. You've got to store it in a room like you're talking about, low humidity, light, and air passing. So a lot of people don't have those rooms. Now we have a large building that we have dedicated one whole room for things like this. And we keep ants and other bugs out of it. It's air conditioned. It's not cheap to keep it air conditioned, but it really does store that comb in there very nicely. So if you get into this kind of honey production, you're going to have to plan ahead. If all this doesn't work, you don't have that. What I suggest you do, go into your bedroom, take some canvas, and lay it on the floor of your nice carpet, and stack all your honey supers in your bedroom that you keep 70 degrees, and just stack them like this, and put a small fan and let it blow on that in your bedroom. I mean, that works, but it doesn't look good, does it? In other words, you're going to have to find a nice room to put them in. Vaping of oxalic acid seems very difficult equipment-wise. Is there another way to apply oxalic acid? Yeah, I mean, there are other ways. You can use the dribble method. There are different ways that you can use oxalic acid. To me, all of them are a little difficult getting measurements just right. There are some OA people that really love it, and they have it mastered down to the right measurements, how to dribble it on between frames and all. But again, I'm not much of an OA guy because it doesn't kill mites below the kept cells. And like you said, the vaporizers are very expensive. And as I've said before, if you follow the label, almost all studies show that it really doesn't do much at all compared to control hives that aren't treated. And it's not until you double the dosage, which is illegal, and double it, that you get good mite kill. So that's a problem I'm seeing right now with oxalic acid. With or without gloves, my hands sweat badly, and this seems to get my bees aggressive. Any advice to cover the smell to the bees to prevent this? That's a very good question. I know when I wear my blue rubber gloves, I don't have sweaty hands, but when I wear those gloves, I do, because I'm so hot. I've not noticed a bad smell. My yellow gloves smell bad, but I've not really noticed the bees being affected by that smell. Is there anything you do to cover this smell to the bees to prevent this? Bees are really good smellers. They really smell really good, but better than dogs, of course. And so, can you use anything like powder, like baby powder, on your hands before you or keep smoking? Sherry said use smoke on your gloves. That's a good way to mask odor and smell. Yeah, don't really have any good suggestions. If anybody else has suggestions for Carolyn, just be sure and leave them in the comment there. We'll relay them on. Yep, that's good. If using oxalic acid with supers, do you treat to just the brood boxes or include supers where brood exists in calculation? Yep. Boy, Amy, I wish I could answer that, but the chemical company has precise answers to all of this, and you've got to follow their answer. I can't speculate. It'd be like you asking me, if I was a doctor, you'd be saying, can I take this amoxicillin 500 milligrams and cut it in half and blah? You can't. I can't do that. There's too much liability for me in risking making a recording here telling people how to alter the federal law. I can't do that. But all these chemical companies, I assure you, they have frequently asked question pages. All of them do, Q&A, and they have scenarios like that on their website. And if they don't, you can email them and they will answer you. That's much safer. I'm not trying to dodge it. I'm just trying to let you know I can't answer that. What are the bees doing when they washboard? I've actually studied that. I've actually taken portable microscopes and held them and watched what they're doing with their proboscis. I looked at, what are they scraping? Is it moisture? What is on there that they're after? Why are they going back and forth with rubbing that so hard like that? There's nothing. There's no reason at all. It's bizarre. Everybody is blown away by this. Nobody can really. Studies have been done, and we know they're young bees doing that, but we have no idea what they're doing. We have no idea. They just go back and forth. It's washboarding. It's puzzling to me. If there was moisture there, I would say, okay, they're licking up moisture on the hive. If there was rough paint, I would say, oh, they're scratching off the paint. If there was propolis, okay, they're rubbing in propolis? I don't know. Nothing. There's nothing there. It's just like they're doing something that we can't see. It's a mystery. We need somebody to solve that mystery.
Mhm.
Are screen bottom boards still effective if my bees are on concrete versus soil ground? Yeah, I think they are. Absolutely. Because parasite just doesn't do well off of its host. So if it falls onto the concrete, they're pretty good crawlers, and I guess they could find the leg of the hive and crawl back up, but would they? I don't know. So it would still be very effective, certainly better than a bottom board, a solid bottom board. But you make a good point. A little soil under there with some other critters that like to eat mites would be better, probably. Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of good questions tonight. Let me check my time. Oh, wow. Where did 46 minutes go? Holy cow. Wow. All right. William, how are you tonight? To prevent swarming in the spring, your thoughts on this as a, did it say master beekeeper?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I read it. Yeah, as a master beekeeper. Well, my thoughts on it as a master beekeeper are the same as anybody else. I don't know. I don't know if a master beekeeper really has swarm control mastered. I guess one of the things you can do, you want your bees to come out of winter with a lot of population because, you got to have a lot of bees in the winter to stay warm and not die. And now you come into spring with a lot of bees. The first thing you're going to have to do is either control swarms. It's very labor intense. Cut out the swarm cells, cage your queen while you're doing that so they don't swarm if you miss one. But you're going to be aggressively pursuing how to keep this hive from swarming. Reproducing is what they're wanting to do. They're wanting to reproduce. So you're trying to stop their instinct to survive. That's tough. I mean, it's built into them. We have to reproduce or we're going to go extinct. And that's what you're trying to stop. That's why it's so difficult. But if you can't control it, thanks, Robert, for the super sticker. Appreciate you guys donating to the cause tonight. Appreciate it a lot. So if you really want to stop swarming, the best way I like to do it is simulate a swarm by taking the queen off, the mother queen with 5 frames, take pressure off, let them raise another queen for 30 days. That's what I do in the spring. It really works well. Good question. Like that a lot. Hey, John, you're a rookie, huh? You have 2 hives. One entrance is pretty debris free, but the other one has a noticeable amount of debris. Looks like coffee ground. What is that indicating? Coffee ground. It sounds like wax dust choppings. I'm not sure. I'll go with what comes to mind right off the bat. Could be that your hive's being robbed, and they have debris from opening up the honeycomb, stripping out the wax so they can steal it. That's one possibility, but if you haven't seen robbing, then we can rule that out. Sometimes bees collect different kind of pollen. I think corn pollen might be close to that color, but they can collect some pollen that they bring into the hive, but then they realize, who brought this stuff in? There's no nutritional value to this. And they just dump the pollen out. I've seen that so many times on my own hives, but that's usually under my screen bottom board. If you have a solid bottom board, that may be what's happening. They don't like the pollen and they're pushing it out. Yeah. Maybe somebody put their coffee grinds in your hive. I don't know. Thanks, Amy, for the super sticker. I appreciate that a lot. You guys donating tonight. Appreciate it. Very good. Okay. Junebug. Is there a time of the year when a person should not start a hive? I would say, good question. Depending on where you live, you want your hive to be able to expand to a size where they can survive the winter. Thanks, Jeremy, for your super sticker. Jeremy Smith. Great job. I appreciate that a lot. So if it's too late in the year for them to build up to 40, 50,000 bees to overwinter, if you're in a cold climate, then it's too late to start. Yeah, you're going to have to kind of evaluate where you live and how do bees overwinter. How big do they have to be? How long are your winters? And so that's there are some people that still sell nukes this time of the year around Illinois. And it scares me. If I sold a nuke to somebody, I would have to say, I'll sell this to you on one condition, that it's too late to start a hive. Maybe they're buying it to build up another hive, maybe different reasons. But I wouldn't let somebody start a hive in July in Illinois. It wouldn't start. No. Good question. Oh, Sharona, thank you for your $10 super sticker today. I appreciate that $10 a lot. Yeah. Always great. Randy, how are you? Sherry and I see your last name is Hanks. Sherry and I used to eat at a restaurant, pick up pizza there sometime. And whenever we bought pizza and paid, the owner would always say, Hanks, instead of thanks. You would say, Hanks, Hanks, Randy Hanks. David, can I clean the honey off my gloves with alcohol? Will it make the bees mad? Well, I wonder if you have plastic gloves or if you have cloth gloves. So honey is water soluble. So all you need to do is use water on your glove. Now, if you have propolis or propolis, if that's what you meant, you got to use alcohol to break it. And no, it won't make bees mad because alcohol evaporates so quickly. And usually it's odorless and very dangerous. If you start an alcohol fire, you really can't see it burning. But anyway, yeah, you can use alcohol and wash off propolis, and you could wash off honey, but water works just as well. Good question, Randy. How many days does it take a newly emerged queen to take her mating flight, return to the hive, and start laying? Yeah, I made a video on that. I wish I had some way to make a list of all the videos I've made and what content they hold, because all the questions that people ask me are always on my videos on my channel. But I made a video exactly about a month ago on the timing, how long it takes her to go here, how long she waits there. And usually when the queen emerges, she's going to wait about 5 days for her wings to harden and for her to fly, at least 5 days. The weather has to be good. She's got to know where she's going by some of the scout bees, maybe taking her to a drone congregation area. And then when she returns to the hive, after mating with 20 or 40 drones, all the sperm that's stored in her spermatheca is going to take another 5 to 7 days for her to start laying on a regular basis. That answers your question. All of that is variable. Give or take a few days. Let me check my time again. 7:52. Hello, Diane Miller. Good to see you. David, I check out my robber screen. Can I put it on now or wait? You can put it on now. It's not a bad idea. You can put them on at night. I hear that works really well, after the bees are back in. Sure, you can put it on now. Kind of watch your bees. Good to put it on anytime you see a nectar flow has ended, because once there's a dearth or an end to a nectar flow, bees are likely to start looking to rob smaller colonies. So that's when you want to put it on. Good question for sure. Krieger, hi David. I'm new bee to beekeeping, and my hive is 2 box deeps, and they are covering the entrance and front of the boxes in the evening. Is this a sign of swarming or just trying to keep cool? I made a video about that, just my last video, and I showed you the difference of a hive that's configured the same way. I showed in my last video. I forget the name of it. Mite Control, maybe? Yeah, Mite Control. But anyway, it has 2 deeps and a super. The one next to it has 2 deeps and a super. I videoed this hive that didn't have any bees on the front. They're going in and out, in and out. The hive next to it, they're plastered on the front, washboarding, all just clustered on the front. The reason they're doing that is because one hive has many more population inside, or much more brood. The brood can't overheat. It's got to be kept about 92, 93 degrees. So if too many bees are in there and it gets hot and they can't push air in and out, a lot of the bees have to come out to allow more ventilation, less heat in the hive. So the bees, it doesn't mean they're swarming. Bees never go and stand on the front of a box before they swarm. I shouldn't say never say never, but I've never seen it. Bees look perfect. In fact, bees aren't really foraging much right before they swarm. There's little to no activity on the front or even going in and out. And all at once, boom, they go out. So no, bees on the front just means a lot of bees in there and they're hot. Just trying to keep cool. If you do an artificial split, how many queen cells should I leave in the old hive? That's tough. 2, at least 2. but you could take the rest and use them in other places. But I'd leave a couple just for insurance. Yeah, Alex. Thanks for being here tonight, Alex Nelson. Appreciate it. Sherry and I have some good friends with the last name of Nelsons. All right. Yep, queen cells. Does a younger queen or an older queen have better winter survivability? All of the variables equal? No, it does make a big difference. A younger queen will always do better. Not so much overwintering, but in the spring, a younger queen, we believe, has stronger QMP, queen mandibular pheromone, and it will less likely swarm with a stronger QMP. A younger queen in the spring is less likely to run out of sperm in the winter. She keeps laying a little bit in the winter. She runs out of sperm in the winter, can't lay anymore. You can't replace her in the spring. It's hard to get queens early in the spring. Always better to replace your queens in July. If you have the money and the queen is more than a couple of years old, by all means, I highly suggest you introduce a new queen in July. You want to go through winter with a strong queen. Absolutely. A new queen. New queens are good all around. Yeah. Hey, Sam Terry. Wow. Thanks for your super sticker, buddy. Appreciate that, Sam, a lot. That means a lot. I'm not just saying that. I'm just really means a lot when you guys make a donation. A lot. I appreciate it. That's cool. Street Creek Apiary. Brian, I don't have screen bottom boards. What are your thoughts on using hardware cloth as an entrance reducer, leaving the ventilation while reducing the area to guard? What are your thoughts on using hardware cloth as entrance reducer, leaving the ventilation while reducing the area to guard? Oh, I see. So you're just wanting to put some screen across the opening of your entrance. I think that would be fine. I think let me consult with all the people that are here, all the beekeepers that are nodding their head. Yeah, so I guess you're wanting to use the screen as a robber screen. Now, one of the ways while we're talking about this, Brian, is a traditional robber screen tries to get the entrance about 3 to 6 inches away from the true entrance. Thank you, Eddie Peterson, for your super sticker. Good to see you, Eddie. But if you want to get that screen up away from the entrance, your bees will go in and out further away from the entrance, and the robbers kind of go for the smell when they get down there. So you might be able to use your screen more effectively as a robber screen. Yep. Yep. Any other questions, Sherry, in the last few minutes of our live stream? I want to tell you guys thanks so much for being part of Beak Squad here with me and Sherry, live streaming outdoors. And it's a beautiful evening here in Illinois. A lot of you were sending your moments of heartfelt compassion, knowing that our house got hit by a tree and windows were broken during the last storm that was really bad. But we live streamed that night on battery backup power. So we're still in the process of kind of getting all that solved. But yeah, we're fine. You can always replace things, material things are material things. But a lot of people in this area and all across Illinois had damage. Like everybody I talked to lost a tree or something. Amazing. But thanks so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, so we're enjoying the season. We're busy working our bees. We've gotten a lot of good rain here lately. It's been a lot of fun seeing things grow and our grass actually turned green again. It was all just brown, we've gotten back to normal summertime activities. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, we're busy, staying very active this summer. Got some speaking engagements, and I've got EAS coming up. I'm looking forward to the Eastern Apicultural Society coming up in July 31st. So if you're going to be there at EAS in Amherst, Massachusetts, look me up and say hi to me. I want you to. I can't wait to see you guys if you're going to be there. EAS has a lot of great speakers. A lot of the Hive Life speakers that you heard last January are going to be at EAS this year. Your favorite's going to be speaking. I'm going to give a couple of talks there. So I'm of all the things that I do, one of the things I'm doing is constantly preparing talks, presentations, PowerPoint presentations. So we're just always busy doing something. It's fun. Yep. So, but let me say this. I do appreciate all of you guys for being part of B Team 6 or being a part of our live stream. I've been hinting around, Sherry and I have been talking about starting a second live stream. another time during the week, like a Saturday morning, a Sunday afternoon, because a lot of you tell me, oh, I couldn't make it on Thursday night. I work, I travel, I can't make it. So if you're watching this at another time, leave a comment to let me know if you would prefer an additional live stream one other day during the week. We only do it for an hour, so it's not that much demanding on our schedule, but we'd love to reach more people and answer more questions. So we're thinking about that. And so also thank you so much for buying so many of our online courses at 50% off on the 4th of July. And I'm glad to see so many people eager to learn more about bees. Well, that's it for me here, guys, tonight. I hate to leave because you guys really build up my spirit. You encourage me so much. And I love you guys. I love you guys being a part. Sherry and I feel like we talked about this today. We talk about a lot of bee stuff, but we feel like our channel here on YouTube, our live stream, is unique because we don't try to be anything other than just David and Sherry. You know what I mean? We're just common people. We're just ordinary people. We're not big time commercial beekeepers. We're not big time PhD entomologists. I mean, I'm a master beekeeper. I took some tests. I won. I passed some tests, but we're just common people trying to help people. You know, and so I hope that you appreciate that about us. That's all we can do is be ourselves. We're happier when we can be ourselves. And if you don't like who we are, please don't try to change us. We're too old. We're not going to change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Go somewhere else and enjoy somebody else, I guess. I don't want to see you go, but I just can't change. I'm too old. So you're going to have to like me and take me for me and Sherry the way we are. Hopefully that's why you're here. So I appreciate it. All right, guys. Love you so much. Appreciate you being here. Can't wait to see you again, either on an upcoming video or next live stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. So good night. We'll see you next time.